And I think that it just fortifies us as agents to have to go back and say, all right, well, you know what? I have to redo my buyer presentation and I have to make it as good as possible because I am now going to compete against other buyer agents that may offer a different form of payment or a level of payment lower than mine.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show, Shawn. In today's episode, we're covering the article, the breaking news that everyone is covering. NAR agrees to a $418 million settlement with the major lawsuit that's going on right now. That news broke, about 5-6 days ago, last Friday. And so the dust has kind of settled on this. And so this isn't, a breaking news that happened today type of lawsuit. This is now that we've had a chance to dissect this because, it came out, we're playing pickleball with a couple agents and someone asked me what I think about it. It's like, what do I think about it? I'm up 7-2 on you and I can't give you, a long diatribe.
It just came out, man. We didn't even...
I can't tell you the ramifications long term of what this is going to be. But now that we've had a chance to reflect, breathe a little bit, get past the clickbaity articles from CNN, New York Times, and all these other mainstream publications, we can start to take a look at what this actually means, Shawn. So first and foremost, for the viewers out there, it's important to note what is actually happening. So the two main things that are happening, first of all, $418 million settlement covers most of the members for the National Association of Realtors. Doesn't cover Shawn and I because we're part of Real Broker, which did more than $2 billion worth of sales. So some agents that are with Compass, that are with Redfin, that are with EXP, that are with Real, that are with, I think there's about 94 other brokerages. There's another math that's involved for the settlement details, but we're going to try not to get into the weeds on that. What you need to know as the consumer, as the real estate agent, are basically two things. Number one, NAR has agreed to put into place a new rule prohibiting offers of broker compensation in the MLS. So we went from showing it up front and it's the first thing you see on Zillow. Now that's going to be removed. You can no longer advertise broker compensation on the MLS. And then the second rule is NAR has agreed to enact a new rule that would require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into written agreements before showing houses, which I thought was already a rule.
We've been used to that for years, and
it's already a rule. So, Shawn, I guess now that you've had a chance to let this simmer, what are some overall thoughts before we dive into some of the more specifics of what we think is going to happen here?
Overall thoughts. All right. So there's a lot of fear out there.
By who?
A lot of fear by agents. There's agents that are so afraid
Talk to me about that.
That their livelihood is going to be taken away. That, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And the way that it was explained to me and to a lot of people by our amazing president at Real, Shawn Srivatsa, was think of it this way. You are going from Arlington to Alexandria. There's two ways to go. You could go around Route 66 or you could go 395, okay? One way you're used to going all the time. The other way is going to be the new way that you have to go, and it might take a little bit longer. There might be a little bit more things. It's a detour. But in the end, you're still going to get to the destination. And that destination for a real estate agent is to guide their client through that transaction, and then in the end, make money. And the only thing here that is different, and I actually think some of these changes are actually pretty good. I think it could be really beneficial to us because now we don't have to, there is so much cloud, there's so many clouds around, well, how do you get paid? Well, how does this work? I don't understand. The listing pays this, but now it's gone. It's gone. So now when I go on a listing agreement, a listing presentation, I say, this is what my fee is. This is what I am charging you to sell your house. Now, the thing is with the listing agreement, you can still, as a seller, offer buyer compensation. You can still offer it. And in Sharon's explanation, if that seller doesn't, they could put themselves at a disadvantage, because now what has to happen is a buyer has to have a buyer agreement signed before we show you any properties. You have to sign an agreement with that agent. It's the law. It has been the law in Virginia for a long time. In that buyer agreement, there is a compensation amount, okay? So that compensation amount could be whatever you decide it's going to be. And so if that seller says, I will still compensate, I'm still going to pay out a dollar figure, great. That's going to help out the buyer after they've signed this agreement, and say, great, the seller is going to give my buyer agent X amount of dollars, or they're going to give me a subsidy, a seller subsidy, so that I can pay my buyer agent. So it's just a different way of doing it. Before and now, we sign an agreement that says you're going to pay X percent's going to Matt, Y percent's going to the buyer's agent. Now it's going to be X percent goes to Matt, and then if you would like to give some sort of seller subsidy to pay for that buyer, good, you can. The biggest change is that cannot be on the MLS. There will be zero compensation places in the MLS to put that. We have to strike it all. So we will not know by looking at a listing online what we will get paid as a buyer agent. We now have to rely on our buyer and say, buyer, I'm getting paid this amount. You will pay me. And that's the way it's going to be. So the good thing is, seller could still give you compensation. They could give it directly to you, and then you can pay me the difference or whatever it is. So there is still going to be a pathway for us as agents to get paid. So stop freaking out.
The biggest myth in all of this is that the buyer agent's compensation is going away. That's the biggest myth. It's not going away. It's disappearing from the MLS. Smart listing agents are still going to advise their sellers to compensate the buyer's agent. So I'm so curious about these agents that you're talking to that are scared. Are they not confident in their value proposition? Do they only work with buyers? Have they not built up a business where they can confidently tell their buyers how much they're worth?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are afraid of change, and myself included. I don't like change. I don't like it.
You just said you like this, which is the biggest shocker of all.
Here's why, though. Here's why I kind of like this. And I'm not saying, let's blow up the whole industry. I love this. This is great. No. The reason I like this is because it's fortifying the buy side. We are already fortified on the listing side. We already know I can go to a listing appointment and say, this is what I get paid, and I'm going to get paid that amount. Now you can go and you can get this buyer broker agreement signed, and you're going to have a great buyer presentation that you're going to have to show these buyers now. You're going to have to actually sit down and say, listen, this is what I do. I'm a market expert. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to negotiate. I know the market so well that if you're in competition, I know how to get you the house. If you're not competitive, I know how to get you a deal. You have to say these things and say that I'm going to show you these properties myself. I'll go through the ins and outs of these properties, tell you what's wrong with them, blah, 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 why this is a good area. All of that stuff is going to matter to a buyer, and they're going to pay you, and you're going to sign a buyer agreement. So the great thing is now you could have 6 buyers all signed up, ready to go. You could have all the listings signed up. So they're fortified now. You know what you're going to make on that transaction. You don't have to worry about what's being paid out, because your buyer broker agreement is going to say what you're going to get paid. Now, what you've got to figure out now is, what does the listing pay, if anything, or what kind of subsidy does this listing pay, so that my buyer doesn't have to come up with this all at once at settlement, because that's a hard thing for them to do. That is why the smart listing agents will still say, hey, I believe to be a competitive listing, you should pay this amount out, because there's going to be a lot of buyers with signed buyer agreements that say, hey, I have to pay my agent X, and if you're not paying out a commission, then I can't really I can't come to your house and give you a contract. So that's why it's fortifying that side. Now for us, we don't know yet how we're going to find out what that listing is going to pay out, because it's not going to be on the MLS. We're not going to see it. Zillow's not going to see it. You're not going to see it. No one's going to know. The only way that we could do that would be maybe through Showing Time, right? So we have this app through Showing Time. Maybe we could get an announcement that says this says X.
I think that's still kind of too MLS-y. How about a text? How about a
How about
phone
text,
call?
a phone call. Maybe there's going to be more communication between agents, which is good. The other thing, you could possibly just put it on your website, your own website. My listings will pay out X%, right? As a blanket.
I know that's the new rule. I still need to learn more about that. You just showed me a couple screenshots.
Yeah, and we're still digesting this. So this could change. Anything could change tomorrow. This is the way that we're seeing this and the way that it was explained to us. And the other thing is my new website, buyeragencycommission.com. You could put your no, I'm just joking, but that was a thought I had. Well, why don't we just have a separate website that people can log in their listings and say what the payout is to a buyer's agent or what a seller's subsidy is for this this transaction. So that's kind of where we are right now. Yes, it's scary when our feathers are ruffled and things are blown up in our face. And this is happening really quickly because we are in March right now, and by July, this is going to be implemented.
So I have an emotional feeling, and that emotion, Shawn, is relieved. I'm a little bit relieved.
Yeah.
It's a little scary. It's going to be challenging, but at the same time, competent real estate agents like you and I don't specifically want to speak for you, but we've been asking for a way to increase the barriers of entry to becoming a realtor. We've been asking for a way to increase the public image of a realtor, because we see these stats come out, dude, we're lower than used car salesmen.
Yeah.
How can we look better in the eyes of the consumer? Okay, well, losing a major lawsuit, forcing more transparency, that would hopefully cause the bad agents to leave the business, the weekend warriors to leave the business, the agents that do unsavory things to leave the business. Meaning that, like, if you're an agent right now and you're scared, that to me is a place of weakness. Like, why are you so scared? Like, if you are such a good real estate agent, this is a huge opportunity for every real estate agent out there, not only to fortify your buyer agreements, to focus more on the listing side, but also to understand your value and to understand your worth.
That's totally it. It gives you a new perspective on real estate and says, all right, I have been doing this 20 years. I have to dig back down and say, why am I worth this? Because I do these transactions and I have a line of things set up that every transaction is going through. But what buyers don't understand is maybe all of those steps that we've got to show and the expertise that we have. And I think that it just fortifies us as agents to have to go back and say, all right, well, you know what? I have to redo my buyer presentation and I have to make it as good as possible, because I am now going to compete against other buyer agents that may offer a different form of payment or a level of payment lower than mine. Okay, so why do you use me over them? I'm just going to fortify that. I'm going to make it better than everybody else. I'm going to show you my value and why you use me as a real estate agent on the buy side, the same way that I do on the listing side. And so I'm actually kind of excited about it. I think I love a new challenge. I want to be a better agent, and I think we should all rise to that challenge and become better agents. Let's become better agents, raise the barrier of entry, like you say, because it's really easy to get your license, but it's not easy to get 20 years of experience and the knowledge that we have after doing 600-700 transactions.
Let's get into what this looks like from each side of the table, Shawn. So first of all, for sellers, for owners, for homeowners, you may be thinking, great, I don't have to pay out a buyer agency commission. But I don't think it's that straightforward, because this isn't just a complete switch to buyers paying their agents. It's essentially removing the advertising of the co-op fee. So if you are a homeowner, if you are a seller out there, there still needs to be some way. And if you say, I think there's going to be agents out there that say, we're not paying out anything, negotiate that into the deal. So perfect. And so then that's when you go with your buyer, your client, your buyer, and your buyer's agent. You say, hey, we're going to offer you $1 million, and then I'm getting X% back as my commission. So as the seller, what should homeowners be thinking who are thinking about selling? And then yourself as a listing agent, how are you going to navigate this after July 1st in terms of what you're advising to potential sellers?
As of right now, I think that The only thing that is changing is the explanation. You should, and I'm advising you to still pay out to the buyer agency X%, because if you don't, it gives you a disadvantage. Now, in this kind of market, there are tons of people going after one property, but just think about all those agents that are writing those contracts have to be paid at some point or another. So just because there's competition doesn't mean you necessarily shouldn't pay out something to that buyer agent. So for me, I'm going to go into the listing agreement the same way I always have. And I'm just going to say that, listen, instead of an X%, let's just call it 5 oranges, right? Instead of you giving me 5 oranges and me splitting it with the other agent, I'm going to say, you give me 3 oranges and then maybe give something else to the buyer agent or something like that, right? So there's still going to be that payment. It's just decoupled. It's no longer, hey, I'm negotiating this. You are going to then pay it directly to that buyer agent or directly to that buyer.
I wish there was a case study where we could just list a single family house in Arlington in Shawn's neighborhood for like a great price that would attract like 20 offers. And then the seller's like, yeah, we're not paying out a buyer agent compensation.
Well, it's going to happen. That's going to happen. And that's
how's that going to play out?
I mean, they'll get offers. They won't get the offers that they would have. And I believe that, or else the offers that they get will have subsidies so that they can pay for their buyer agent. So it's a mixed bag, right? So I don't exactly know. I mean, we have never seen that before, so we don't exactly know. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I believe that the one that gives the buyer, it pays the buyer agent fee, will get a higher offer net.
Yeah, and you're going to see this pendulum swing over the next, 12 to maybe even like 36 months of where is that middle ground between, hey, I'm going to pay out X%, and then I expect the buyers to pay their buyer's agent, X% on top of that. So I think sellers and agents alike are going to try to find this new middle ground where, I hate to say it, Shawn, but commissions are going down. They're going down significantly. I mean, all the local news and major news reports are saying that right now seller pays between 5 to 6. I foresee a time not too far in the future where those are probably half. Those are going to be closer to 3.5 to 4.5% total. So I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, what percent the buyer is going to bring to the table, what percent the seller. Now, what I am curious about is the seller. We're wrapping up the seller talk, the homeowner that lists their property. How is it going to be different? Well, what number should they focus on? They should focus on their net, what they're getting after fees. So sales price, minus commissions, minus yada, yada, yada. I'm curious, what's going to happen when the seller gets a sales price that they like and a net price that they like, and the buyer agent commission's like 3 times what the normal commission is? Do you think they would strike that just out of spite?
I don't know. It could happen too, right? They can put that in the contract. That's what you're going to pay that guy. But I want to say something. I don't believe now. This is the myth, right? There were the headlines out there. 6% is going away. 6%, blah blah blah. There was no 6%, right? Maybe that was the norm. There was no set in stone. This is what is charged. And it's funny. I used to go on listing appointments and people are like, oh yeah, the 6%. And I'm like, it's not 6%. It's whatever you're negotiating at that time. So get rid of the 6%. It's not there. Will commissions come down? Maybe in some areas because of high price points, right? But imagine going to middle America where a house is $250,000. Do you think commissions are going to go down? No, I don't think so, because it's harder to make money there. You're not doing as many transactions. So it really is dependent on the price points. It depends on the agents. It depends on the skill of the agents. And overall, will the buy side come down? It could, but you know what? We've been dealing with on the listing side for years. There's been discount brokerages that you can find right now. Will you get the level of service that you want? Maybe if that's what you're looking for, you just want to save money and you want to do all the work, hire that person, right? That's going to be the same thing on the buy side. If you want to go to all the open houses and me not show you a property, or that buyer agent not show you one property, and you just say, I just need you to write the contract and get me to closing. Okay, well, here's the fee for that. Saves me a ton of time from running around all over the place. So yes, it could come down in that regard because our services could be different on that on that back end. But I think as a good listing agent, you should say to your client, listen, you're welcome to do whatever you want. This is what I believe will happen if we don't do this. And this is what I believe will happen if we do this. And then after a couple of months, we will have case studies. We'll actually have case studies. Well, look at this house. This house didn't pay out any commission and it sold for X. This one paid this out and it got Y. Which one would you rather do?
How are we going to know that if those commissions aren't in the MLS?
Damned if I know. We can't find the information anymore on the MLS. So hopefully sometime, somewhere, there's some sort of registry of commissions or something like that. Because, this is a big metric for us to figure out values. It's a big metric for us to figure out incomes and everything else. So at some point and somewhere, it's got to be shown to us. And for statistical purposes, I hope that it's shown, because you know what? Our commissions have been out there forever for everybody to see. And now you're not really going to know.
A registry of commissions. That sounds like colluding.
It's not colluding. It's just a registry to show you what that actually paid out. We're not colluding at all.
Show what everyone else is paying out.
Yeah. I mean, you have to show what you're going to pay out, at some point. And like they're saying, you can do it on your website. You can say, have a data entry on there. It just can't be on the MLS. So this is another thing, is like, how do you, we all get feeds from the MLS, right? We get feeds from the MLS that create our websites, IDXs. The IDX is fed by our Bright MLS. And so, on my site, it doesn't tell you what the commission is. Can you fix
that dumb IDX site?
Dude, I found out what that is.
What was that?
Listen to this. IDX Broker, dude. IDX Broker, I pay you a ton every month for 2 websites. And you know what they said to me? They sent me the email just a little bit ago. They lump single-family homes to single-family homes. Townhouses and condos, they lump together.
No.
So if it's a townhouse, if it comes in as a townhouse through the Bright MLS, IDX Broker gets the feed. They feed it to my website. They lump in townhouses and condos into one, so a townhouse looks like a freaking condo.
That is factually incorrect and wrong.
It's factually incorrect. It's wrong, and you need to change. If I'm paying you an amount per month,
so much,
you can't tell me that you can't change that little feed in about a minute.
That's a material, wrong piece of information.
They said that it's in a subcategory. Well, then show the subcategory. Don't show the main category or something. But you can't show a townhouse as a condo if it's not a condo.
What are they going to do to fix that?
I don't know. If you want me to read this, this is...
Dude, no, I don't know. But
I was blown away. I'm like, how can you give inaccurate information?
Well, some people out there are saying, okay, well, now brokerage websites are going to become more popular. Like, you're going to have more because the MLS is losing power. I don't think I necessarily agree with that. I still think, the Zillows, the Redfins, the MLSs of the world are still going to be popular.
Yeah, because they've spent the advertisement to get the people onto the website, and actually they have better platforms than our agent websites.
Right.
Our agent websites aren't great because the companies like IDX Broker and whatever, they're not upping their game.
They're not built for starting and finishing your home
right.
search.
These are companies that have spent millions and millions of dollars on one website to run smoothly and perfectly. Whereas all these IDXs, they create a system that kind of pulls the feed, so it's not going to be as good. Right?
Okay, so that's what we're thinking from the seller point of view. But from the buyer point of view, there's a couple different ways to look at it. The first, the people out there that say you don't need an agent. By the way, you've never needed a real estate agent. Can we just make that clear? You can always, in this country, buy and sell real estate without an agent. But for the buyers out there that don't want to use a real estate agent, congratulations. This just made it even simpler to avoid using a buyer's agent. But for those that do you want to jump in?
But guess what? You can no longer say, oh, I'm just going to take your commission, right? Like, that's what we always got. Like, oh, well, I was thinking of just representing myself, and then I'll just take the whatever commission on the
then they would
side.
They would just write in like a 2.5% subsidy.
Correct. They could, but that's what I'm saying. It's like now it's on them. I guess it is.
So what I'm getting at, Shawn, is now the buyers are getting what some of them wanted, right? They didn't want to be forced to use a real estate agent. So now they can write their own offer, and they can fill out their own subsidy, and they can do all these things. And I was on Reddit, which is probably the worst place to go to look at some of these takes. And there was a buyer that was asking, hey, I'm so looking forward to not using an agent. I'm just going to go directly to the listing agent. Then someone asked, hey, are you looking to buy this month or next month? He goes, oh, 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you have no idea what it actually takes to buy a house. So in addition to the misinformation that's out there around the buyers, I think it's now more imperative than ever to actually work with a buyer's agent that, yeah, sure, you like them, but they're not just like your relative. Like, they're not just the first person you met at an open house who's now going to be representing you. They're actually going to be doing their job of finding you the property, negotiating, and help, walk you through a clean settlement.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. You're spending your money now. Your money. You always have been. You just didn't realize it. And this is the problem. The problem with the industry said that buyer agents were free. Oh, my services are free. They were never free. You were paying somehow, in some way, they were getting paid through the listing, and you're paying for it through the purchase price, right? So you were always paying for it. It was just financed through the purchase price.
Well, I don't know if they're going to be paying as much as you say they are, because
they might not be.
I think most sellers are still going to be. It's going to be in their best interest to get the best net possible. It's going to be in sellers and homeowners' best interest to continue to pay out a buyer's agent. Now, I don't know if it's going to be the same percentage that it has been in years past. We've seen in Arlington, commissions have dropped monumentally for buyer's agents. In 2015, I think the average was like 2.85%, and then last year it was like 2.5%. Like they've come down drastically, and I think they will still continue to come down drastically. But that's buyers are getting what they want. If they wanted their own representation, now they have a means to potentially pay for their own representation, Shawn.
Yeah, and I think you're paying your money. Hire the right guy, girl. Hire the right agent for this, because this is your money. You're spending it on somebody that will give you a great service. They're going to get your offer in. They're going to call the listing agent. They're going to say, hey, did you get my offer? Hey, how many offers do you have? This is what I was saying the other day on my panel that I was talking to agents about. Like, if you're not calling the listing agent and you're just sending it over an offer, you're not doing your client any good, right? If you're in a multiple offer situation, or even if you're writing on a property, there's a lot of agents, I'll get an offer and I won't even hear from the person. I don't even know who they are. Just an offer came in. What if it went to spam and I missed the offer, right? Like, you have to call and you have to communicate. And the one thing I was saying is, like, communication is key. If your agent is not communicating your wants and your needs and what you want in this contract, they're not doing you anything. And if you, as a listing agent, are not connecting with that list, as a buyer's agent, not connecting with the listing agent in some way to make them feel comfortable, to make them feel that, hey, I trust Shawn. I know he's going to get my client, his client, through this process and to closing. That's the main key thing that a buyer agent should be doing to make sure that your offer is getting taken, right? If you're competing, I'm going to do everything in my power to win the deal. Number one, contingencies, price, that alone. But me as a person, talking to the person, building a rapport, and getting across the finish line. I think there are so many agents that won't do that don't do that, and that will make the difference on your buy side presentation, right? So, I mean, I think people have to really fortify that, and the lower level agents will charge less because they don't do as much. They don't have the expertise. So yeah, you might see the agency compensation come down, or buyer. Actually, you're not going to see the agency compensation anymore. So we don't know if it's going to come down anymore. But just sharpen your tools, man.
I had a multiple offer scenario on my listing in Sterling a couple months back. And one of the agents said, hey, here's our offer. By the way, I'm going to lower my commission by 2/3, and the seller can keep that to add to our. This agent just found a way to, this was like $1 million property. This agent just found a way to increase their offer essentially by like $15,000 or so. I don't know if that math is adding up, but it was a not insignificant amount of money. So, Shawn, we are regularly in bidding wars of 5 offers, 10 offers. We were in one of 14 offers, and that's not out of the norm in this area.
Yeah.
And
can I ask you this?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to put a bow on this of what's going to happen when it comes down to our offer or the next offer. The agent calls us and says, "Hey, you're $5,000 off. If you can do one thing, it's yours." And your buyer says, "I can't go $5,000 more." What do you do then?
Well, is it worth your time to give them the $5,000? That's what there's some agents that'll say, well, you know what? Do I want to go show you 10 more houses and go to this process? Or is it worth the $5,000 to me? Some agents will say, all right, I'll give it to you, or some people will say no. And that's the way it is, right? So, but I wanted to ask you this. That person that gave back the commission and gave a higher net, did they win the deal?
No.
There you go. So the thing is, there's always going to be that. It doesn't matter if this person's given more commission or this gives less commission. The people that have the money are going to win. And that's it, right?
They also submitted an offer, and they were like, we submitted an over asking offer. And it was $100 over asking.
$100 over asking.
I shouldn't poo-poo the agent. She was, nice and kind and yada, yada, yada. But I was like, all right, over asking. Okay, $100.
Well, that's the difference. There's buyers that don't realize, they're not taught, they don't know what the strategies are or what the competition is like. And so they rely on their agent to give a subsidy from their commission. And then you have the powerful people that are saying, hey, I got the best agent out there, and he deserves every penny, and they're going to get me this deal, and they win, right? So, there's going to be positives and negatives throughout this whole process. I'm not afraid of it. I think it's going to be a good thing for the industry because there's going to be clarity. And that's one thing about the industry recently, or for the past 20 years that I've been in this, there was never real clarity in, I could talk to somebody tomorrow and be like, hey, do you know how agents get paid? They'd be like, no, I have no idea. No one freaking knows except us. It's like, you have to explain it to these people because they're not in the business like us every day. They don't pay attention to this stuff. They are now because there's a huge lawsuit and people are stirring the pot. But before, they didn't. So now it is going to be clear. Listing agent gets paid, buyer agent gets paid. That's it.
So there's been some talk about housing prices, and housing prices could potentially decrease. Shawn, I actually had to Google that phrase specifically to find the outlets that are talking about that. Most of them are saying, yeah, probably not really. I'm thinking, is there any scenario where housing prices could decrease because of this? And the only thing that I can think of is if you were about to go and do a short sale, or if you're going to do foreclosure, or if you were in a dire situation and you had to save that $5,000 or that $10,000. But then it got me thinking about another point about new brokerages that could pop up, or new ways what if it was a flat fee and then per showing, or what if it was just a 1%? Shawn, most of those businesses already exist. There's already alternative ways. There were no rules that said you had to get paid this amount and that was the only amount. Redfin offers the kickbacks. There's discount brokerages in our area that, sell for a flat fee or a reduced, commission. So, I guess the twofold question for you, and we don't need to spend a lot of time on housing prices because I think that's answers itself. But what are your thoughts on housing prices as well as new buyer brokerage opportunity businesses?
Yeah, in my opinion, I don't see the prices coming down. The only thing that's going to bring prices down is, if the demand drops. Naturally, we're going to see prices go down. The demand is there. I don't see that we're going to see price drops. Think about it this way: if you don't offer a commission to a buyer's agent right now, and your house is sitting, what are you going to do in the future? If your house isn't selling, you could, 1, drop the price, or 2, you could offer a subsidy. We see subsidies all the time, right? In the MLS, hey, I'm going to give you $10,000 if you purchase my house. Personally, I don't think it works because there's, a lot of people don't see it. But that's what people will do in the future. Hey, all right, I'm not paying a buyer agency compensation right now, but Oh, my house isn't selling, so maybe I'll put that up and see if that works, right? So that's the difference. So I don't see a downward pressure on prices personally, but I'm an optimist, so maybe I'm wrong. What was the other question?
New business models.
New business models. They're there. You already said it, right? Yes, they'll be maybe more prominent. Maybe new ones will pop up because, they see an opportunity. Hey, great. That's what this world is about. That's what the United States is about, is opportunity and bringing about different business models. And in the future, if I see a business model that I like and I'm like, wow, that really works, I'm not spending in it, maybe I'll adopt that on the buy side. Who knows? And that's the thing about it. It's an exciting time in real estate where we are going to see changes and we're going to see new business models, but are they going to hurt you? Are they going to hurt the agent that has been doing this for a long time, that has the rapport with their clients and has been doing this forever? I don't think so. I think the conversation is going to be opened up, and it's up to you to explain. That's it. Explain the business. Explain your value, and explain how the process works.
I saw someone throw out a business idea, and I've read so many articles and posts and comments. So forgive me, I don't know where this actually came from. I think it was Instagram. But they said, what about this, where it's like a $1,000 upfront fee to the buyer's agent, and then like $50 per showing, and something like, $250, per month, or $400 per month. And that gets you, unlimited, emails, like comparable property reports, phone calls, like during XYZ hours. And then at the end, maybe there's like a little bonus once they close. Possibly.
It's a cool,
right?
cool business model. It would be like a subscription model, right?
But sorry, I'm going to just answer my own question. The disconnect for me is the buyers, they want to pay for their own representation, but there's not a fair value between the low cost that they want to pay versus the high experience that the agent has. As if to say, hey, I'm my buyer and I only want to pay this amount. Well, this agent that's been doing this for 25 years, guess what? Their value proposition is so much higher. And so we may find these, $400 a month retainer, businesses pop up, but what sorts of agents and what sorts of representation are you going to be getting from that when the more established agents are doing their business a little bit differently? So Shawn, some people argue is like Showami is a service, and you pay an agent. Like if I'm out of town, if I'm going to Phoenix tomorrow, if I'm out of town and my clients want to see a property, everyone's busy. I go on Showami as a real estate agent and I pay another agent $50, $60, $70, $80 per showing to show my clients another property. Now, the downside with this, I was talking to my brother. He's like, yeah, Showami's great, except don't use these 3 agents. Right. Like apparently those 3 agents they're just not with the program. And so, we can try to revolutionize and apps and technology and AI, all of these things about real estate, but at the end of the day, it's still human to human connection. And if you don't trust the human behind the technology, then you may run into some issues.
My point, here's what it was. What is the downside of you paying a person on Showami, right?
There can be a lot of downsides.
Well, you're paying amount. You're prepaying. You're prepaying an agent to show. What happens if that person never buys? You've just lost money. So that's the thing that people don't get, that agents are doing right now. We are taking on new clients. We are showing properties, running around, doing all this stuff, writing offers, losing offers, whatever, for months, not making a dime, not making 1 penny. Now we can change that narrative and we can say, you know what? No longer am I working for nothing until you settle. You have to pay me up front. And I want a $5,000 deposit right now. That'll go towards your end, right? This now fortifies our relationship, because no longer am I your, guy you can just whip and tell me to be there, and I'll be there because I'm like, oh, I got to make this commission, Like, you need to pay me first. And now I will run and do the things. And then when my time has taken up all that, now you're going to pay me more, right? And so it could fortify a lot of these buyer agents in actually making money, because there's a lot of times when we take out people for years and they're like, I decided not to buy. You lost money. You lost your time with your family and everything else. And that's the thing that people don't get when they're not in this business. There's a lot of time missed with your family and a lot of time missed on the golf course and things like that. Do I go golfing a lot? No, because it takes 5 hours out of my day.
Don't bring up golf in this conversation.
Dang it. But you know what? In the future, I'm going golfing because my clients are going to prepay me and they're only going to call me when it's necessary, not when it's, I just want to see this property. Can I go see it? So in that way, it could fortify that.
So, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on like $500 per offer? You think some clients would think long and hard about whether or not they wanted to write an offer if they knew it cost $500?
Exactly, yeah. Do you really want to write on this property? Because it's going to cost you money. And that's where I feel strongly about the business model and saying, like, this could be a really good thing for us. It could be that we have more of a reliable income rather than, man, is this buyer ever going to buy? How many offers do I have to write? Now it could be, this is what I make. This is how much it is for an offer. This is what my deposit is. This is how much it is per showing. And bam, right? So this is what's going to happen to the business model side of thing on the buyer side. It's just like the listing side. Hey, what am I going to give you? I'm going to give you a virtual tour, 3D tours. We're going to help you renovate this place, get painters in here. We're going to stage it, and you're going to pay me X, right? Granted, it's not up front, but you could charge some up front. So that's the same thing on this side. And I feel like
the last thing on buyers, and we'll touch on this shortly because VA buyers, I love VA buyers. We had best resident agent, Nikki Lagoris. She loves VA buyers.
Yeah.
I think she could talk a lot about VA buyers. So, the rules say what? You can't have the seller pay for any sort of subsidy to the buyer's agent. Something like that. Is that correct?
Oh, with a VA.
If you are purchasing as a VA buyer, the seller cannot compensate the buyer's agents through a subsidy.
I don't know that. I know that there are max subsidies per loan. So if it's a VA loan, a conventional loan, if it's a second home, like if I'm purchasing a second home right now, the max subsidy that I can get is 2%. So sometimes these subsidies that the seller might be giving are going to be too much.
So Shawn, just reading online, veterans are not allowed to pay any realtor broker for their services when using VA loans. So I think that what this means is like, if you're my client, I'm charging you X percent. The seller is only paying out, X minus Y percent. You, under VA rules, are not allowed to pay me to make up the difference. And so there's a narrative out there that is saying VA buyers, veterans, just aren't going to be able to purchase houses. So I think what will happen is what always happens.
Rules change.
Something's going to change.
Yeah.
They're like, they can't do it. Well, guess what? We just had a monumental lawsuit. Don't you think something's going to change on the VA side?
Everything has to change underneath us. That's the thing. Will they be able to finance a portion of this or all of the fee to the buyer agent at some point? I think at some point the rules have to change. Right now they can't. They can't finance any portion of my fee. But in the future, because of this whole thing that has blown up, there has to be changes going down the line. And so hopefully in the future, lenders say, hey, we kind of need these buyer agents because they are the ones that feed us the clients. So how do we keep them to come to us? Well, maybe there's some way, I don't know, like there has to be some sort of payment through the loan or financing, I should say, of the buyer agent fee in the future. If the seller is not paying out a subsidy or something like that. Right?
I think the VA is going to figure out,
Yeah.
VA buyers are going to figure out. So I feel bad that there's this kind of impasse right now, but I think there's a solution. Shawn, buyer lead generation, Zillow. Where do we think the focus is going to be right now? Because right now, what happens is, Johnny Arlington, goes on Zillow, clicks request a tour, and, an agent gets a phone call and says, yeah, I'll show it to you in 2 hours. Listen, rules are rules. NAR says you got to sign a contract with a buyer's broker before you tour a property. So do you think there's going to be kind of a shift away from agents that are trying and paying? We've had agents on that have said they pay $20,000 a month to these services like Zillow to get buyer leads. Do you think there's going to be a shift away from that now that there are a couple more hurdles in place?
Personally, I think there's got to be, right? I mean, if there is no buyer agency compensation and you're selling me buyers, what am I buying these buyers for? So there has to be some sort of guarantee in this that when you give me a buyer and I'm paying Zillow X amount of dollars per month, either you have to fortify, again, your buyer agreement and say, all right, I'm signing you up for 6 months and that's that, which is really hard to do the first time you meet them.
Well, you do like a 1 day. You do a 1 day
You do a
thing.
1 day, sure. But I mean, that's the thing is it going to change it all? I think it has. I think there's got to be some sort of change in Zillow and these buyer models where they're feeding buyers out, because I think if people aren't, well, it's hard to say. It's really hard to say because we don't know. But like right now, there's typically a buyer agency compensation. So it's easier for, us to take all these buyers and say, all right, we're going to show you this. We're going to show you this, because we can rely on the fact that there is going to be some sort of payment attached to the listing. But what happens in the future is there is no payment secured on the listing. We don't know how these things are done. We don't know if they're giving a subsidy. So now this Zillow is saying, hey, here's your buyer, but now you don't know if you're going to get paid. So basically, it's going to be harder to get those buyers because you're going to be saying, like, listen, I need to get paid for my time, and here's why you should use me, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's going to be more difficult for sure.
Come July 2nd, I don't think half the homes are no longer going to offer buyer compensation.
Correct.
I think it's going to be assumed that some sort of compensation will be offered, and if you're on the listing side, it will be assumed that, and if you're saying, hey, we're not paying any buyer agent compensation, it's going to be assumed that in that contract, that's going to be written into the addendum. What I'm curious about is what's going to happen with appraisals. All right, so $1 million house, they're not paying out any sort of compensation. Agent needs 3%, so they just write up $1,030,000. How's the appraiser going to gauge that one?
Yeah, I mean, if you're writing up they're on strict guidelines, man. If you're pushing the price up, for instance, like you said, it's $1 million property, all right, and you push it up $30,000 to pay a 3% commission back to your buyer agent. Hey, they don't care. They're looking at values, and if you're pushing the price up above value, your appraiser's not going to.
But is the appraiser going to see that?
Yeah,
they're going to see. They see the contract.
Yeah, they see the contract. Okay. They know that it's a sales price of X. It was listed at $300,000. And now it went for $330,000 or whatever it is, right? Even in an escalation standpoint, right? Whenever I'm talking to an appraiser, I'm like, hey, I got 7 offers, price here, went here, blah, blah, blah. So if it's just one offer, and I've had this happen many times where buyers just need money, they need cash. So how do you get them cash when, you're trying to get a good deal for them? Well, you increase the sales price and you ask for that back on the back end. So it's the same thing with, hey, can I pay my buyer agent that way? Yeah, maybe you could. Maybe you can increase the price, and if it appraises, great. I don't know.
You know how when there's like a home warranty, there's like a line item for a home warranty?
Yeah.
And when there's like a termite inspection, there's a line item, and the money just goes to the termite. Isn't there just going to be a line item in there's NVAR's got to be working on the new contract. Yep. And the paragraph's going to be about yay big, a couple lines. It's going to be like 4 lines. And it's going to say, like, if there's a compensation, then this is what the buyer broker is requesting. And there should just be a line item. I don't think there should be like a separate, credit addendum or anything like that.
No. There's going to be a line item. There's going to be probably seller subsidy to purchaser, seller subsidy to buyer agent, seller subsidy or whatever. I mean, there could be multiple subsidies, or it could be just one. They get the whole subsidy, they pay their agent out of that subsidy, and it's part of their closing costs, right? So yes, there will be changes to the contracts that we don't know. So we're speculating right now. There will be big changes, and those changes will act in our behalf to fortify that we make money. And that's why I'm not really afraid of it. I'm okay with the change because I think that it'll be a better line in the sand to say, hey, this is what each person's getting. It's no longer through the seller. Oh, they're paying out this much,
There is so much to talk about
Yeah.
on this topic, and we're running long, and I got like 5 more things I want to talk about. Maybe we'll do a part 2. Maybe we'll wait for the dust to settle even more as we get more, input on things. But love to know your thoughts. Be sure to drop them in the comment section below. And for Shawn and myself, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.